Hey guys, welcome to the Gods Unchained beta with TheProfesserf. Alright, it's time for our Monday Mythic meta for the ranked weekend event that ran on December 24th, 25th, and 26th. Let's take a look at our results. Alright, so for those of you that keep track on GU Deck, you might have noticed that this past weekend there was a lot of server and data issues which caused GU Decks to not be able to populate the actual list. So I reached out to David from GU Decks and I was able to get the list of users that we think will be in the top 10. So a reminder, these are unofficial results. We'll have to wait for the official results to publish, but this is what we have so far. We have 4 players that finished with 24 wins, 2 players with 23. We had several players tied with 22 wins. So with these being unofficial, we'll have to wait for the official results to see who gets the last few spots in the 9th and 10th position. Let's go into more details. Okay, so looking at our top 10 list of players, here is the breakdown. We have 1 player that played Nature, an aggro nature list that managed 24 wins. We had 5 players that played War, a mix of control and aggro war, with the best war deck finishing with 24 wins. We had 2 players that played Magic, they're both the aggro version, with the best version coming in at 24 wins. We had a Deception player that finished with 23 wins, playing a mid-range Deception deck. The best Death deck finished with 22 wins, this one's a control Death deck version. And then the best Light deck that I found was an aggro Light deck, finished with 22 wins. So for the unofficial top 10, we can see that Nature took first, War took 2nd, 4th, 5th, 7th, and 9th. Magic took 3rd and 8th. Deception took 6th, and Death took 10th. Let's look at our top decks in more detail. Our top Nature deck finished with 24 wins. This one's an aggro Nature deck with the Animal Bond God Power. We have our standard low curve here with Chiron, Low Hanging Fruit, Marshwalker, Black Jaguar, Canopy Barrage, Finian, and Underbrush Boar. Those are complemented with Wild Hog and Pyramid Warden. You have 2 copies of removal with Lightning Strike, and then 2 copies to generate value with Celestial Stag. Then you have your big B stats with the Overgrown Rhino, Brazen Moose, Giant Pangolin. Some notable additions here, we have 2 copies of Falling Star, a 5-mana spell where it gives your opponent's strongest creature a burn +6, and it summons 3 1/2 Badgers with Confuse to your board. And whichever creatures you have on your board, each one gains +1 strength. So this, at the very least, summons 3 2/2 Badgers. And we have 1 copy of Sudden Bloom, a 6-mana spell that gives a random friendly creature +5/+5. If you are also frenzied, it will give the creature Overkill and Twin Strike. Our best war deck was a control war deck with 24 wins with the Valka's Presence God Power. You're focusing on early game controlling the board and stalling. You have Pyramid Warden, you have Relics with Commander's Gladius, Blade of Sticks, Magic Missile Launcher, Master Tactician, Warmonger Smith, Audi, Archangel Bruiser, the Grand Hall, and then you have your removals with Carnage Sweep, Orcish Elite, Blitz creatures with Ravenous Chimera, Aeneas, Herdicus, and then you have your top end with Demogorgons, Hector Prince of Troy, and Avatar of War. A notable spell here is a 6-mana spell, Soul Survivor. This gives +5 strength to one of your creatures on the board. It then does the total strength damage to each other creature. I ran into a couple of decks that ran Soul Survivor, and it's quite an effective card in clearing the board while leaving a creature with a high strength to deal with for the next turn. Our best Magic deck finished with 24 wins. This one's an aggro Magic deck with the Mage Bolt God Power. You have your standard low curve with spells and creatures, Ancient Text, Assistant Alchemist, Form of Power, Shadow Scryer, Street Conjurer. You follow that up with more removals with Star Shard Bolt, Tracking Bolt, Vow of Learning, Worm Breath, and then you have your strong magic creatures with Demetrius, Vortimer the Volatile, All-Seeing Spire, Miraculous Familiar, Oni Spellsword, and the Monolith of Storms. Once the Monolith of Storms gets on the board, your opponent has an urgency to remove it. Otherwise, you're able to take advantage of the ability and do plenty of damage either directly to your opponent or to their creatures every turn. Our top Deception deck managed 23 wins. This one's a mid-range Deception deck with Orpheus Distraction. Although looking at it, it looks like a low curve aggro deck. I'm calling it mid-range due to a couple of reasons. We have Value Generator in the Hollow, which is a card that, if not handled by your opponent, which has backline and ward, so it's not easy to take care of. And then you have Orpheus Mask, a relic that helps you control the board very effectively, bouncing a creature from your enemy's board back to their hand. You have 2 copies of Rapture Dance for board clear. And you also have Ludus Deception, a way to disrupt your opponent's hand by taking a look at it and removing a card from their hand and setting it back to their deck. They do get to draw a card in replacement. We have other value cards with Lightfoot Informant, stealing cards from your opponent, and also the Vault Vagabond. So while we have the low curve typical here, like Dark Knives, Patient Pickpocket, Switch Duelist, Armor Lurker, you also have several value generating cards that can help this deck go from the mid to the late game. Our best death deck finished with 22 wins. This one's a controlled death deck with the Blood Ritual God Power. You have your early game control and removal cards, Blight Bomb, Siren of the Grave, Sulfuric Rain, Eva, Baroness of the Dead. You have some card draw with Burrowing Scarab, Vrock. Then you have your Void Afterlife activation cards with Canopic Hoarder. And then you have your removal cards with Neferu, Reap, Apocalypse Now, End Times. You're looking to set up an endgame win conditions with Neferu's Kopesh, Hippocrates Monster, Polyhymnia, and value from Jason and Demogorgon. Our best light deck was an aggro zoo version with the Summon Acolyte God Power. This one managed 22 wins. You have your strong early light game cards like Cudgel of Atonement, Ritual Rod. You have the Bright Mage, Light's Levy, and Radiant Dawn, followed up with Highborn Knight, Master of Indulgence, CERN, and Canonize. You have 1 copy of the Golden Wing Sphinx, Asterius, and Lysander for your top end. Taking a look at our weekend snapshot meta for the last 3 days at the Mythic level, we could see that Light had the highest win rate at 53%, although not too popular, only at 9% played. Light is positive across the board with a great winning percentage versus Death and Magic. Light does have a losing matchup versus War. We also have War and Death with positive win rates, with fairly good representations at 26% for War and 11% for Death. War has favorable matchups across the board, and Death has favorable matchups versus Nature, Magic, and Deception. We have the most represented God in Nature with 33%, with a decent win rate of 49% here. And at the bottom here, we have Magic and Deception with lower win rates and lower representations. Updating the top 10 scoreboard with results from last week, we can see that with last week's performance, Clutch jumps up 3 spaces, Symbol jumps up 1 spot, we have Aftermath gaining 8 spaces into the 19th slot, and several other players moving down to make room. Alright, so here's our unofficial list of top 10 players again. Congratulations on a great weekend, and good luck on your prizes when you receive them later this week.